For the last couple of years, let's be honest, Calgary's housing market has been on an absolute tear. But the latest numbers for September 2025, well, they're telling a very different story. We're talking about a significant cool down. So today, we're going to unpack exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and most importantly, what it could mean for you. And this one number right here is really the headline, -4%. That's the year-over-year drop in the total residential benchmark price, the value of a typical home. On an average place in Calgary, that's a dip of over $20,000 in just 12 months. This is actually the first time we've seen a negative sign in front of that number since way back in early 2021. And that, my friends, signals a major shift. So the big question is, how did we get here? All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll dig into that headline story, the shifting market. Then we'll get into the two key forces that are really driving all this change, what I'm calling the ebb and flow of supply and demand. After that, we'll connect the dots to see how this all hammers prices. We'll look at why not all homes are being affected the same way. And finally, we're going to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Okay, so let's get right to it. The most crucial takeaway is this. Calgary's housing market is officially, undeniably, in a cool-down phase. That frenzied, gotta-buy-now pace of the last few years, it's given way to a much more balanced and, in some cases, a declining environment. Now, at the end of the day, any market is just a story about supply and demand, right? For our story, we've basically got two main characters. On one side, we have falling sales. That's the ebb. And on the other, we have a rising inventory. That's the flow. So let's see how these two are playing off each other. And this slide, well, it just lays out that core dynamic perfectly. On one side, you've got buyers tapping the brakes, sales are slowing down. But on the other side, more and more homes are popping up for sale. What does that mean? It means buyers suddenly have more choices, and with that, a lot more bargaining power. It is a classic push and pull scenario. And just look at the scale of this slowdown for a second. We are talking about a 14% drop in sales compared to just 1 year ago. That is a massive shift in buyer activity and a super clear signal that the red-hot demand we got used to is officially cooling off. And now for the other side of that coin, inventory. The number of homes for sale shot up a whopping 36% compared to last September. So the takeaway here is pretty straightforward. You've got fewer buyers out there, and they're chasing a much, much larger pool of properties. So, with sales dropping and inventory way, way up, what's the logical next step? What do you think happens to prices? This is where we connect all the dots and see the direct impact. To really get this, we've got to talk about a key metric called months of supply. The easiest way to think about it is like this. If, starting tomorrow, not a single new home was listed for sale, how many months would it take to sell every single home that's currently on the market? It's just a fantastic way to measure the balance of power in the market. And here it is, the magic number, 4.02 months of supply. Now, to put that into perspective, this time last year, that number was just 2.53 months. So we've gone from a really tight seller-friendly market to a situation with over 4 months of inventory sitting there. And that shift is what's putting all that downward pressure on prices that we saw in our headline number. But you know how it is, right? The citywide average never, ever tells the whole story. Different parts of the market are behaving in very different ways. So come on, let's peel back the layers and take a look under the hood. Okay, have a look at this. While most types of homes saw a little dip, row housing took the biggest hit by far, dropping almost 5% compared to last year. But did you spot the outlier? Check out semi-detached homes. They actually eked out a small gain of almost 1%. It just goes to show you, your own personal experience in this market really depends on what you're buying or selling. And check this out. If we slice the data by price, we can see exactly where the slowdown is hitting the hardest. The drop in sales is sharpest for homes priced under $500,000. So it seems like the more affordable end of the market is feeling this cool down the most. But here's the twist. While sales are slowing down at that lower end, the inventory, the number of homes for sale, is actually piling up the most in the mid to upper price ranges. We're talking specifically between $600,000 and $1 million. This tells us there are really different pressures at play across the entire price spectrum. It's fascinating. All right, so we've covered the what. Now let's pull back the lens a bit and talk about the how, as in, how did we even get here? To really understand today's market, you've got to look at the journey we've been on for the past few years. This timeline really puts it all into context. If you think back to 2022, we were at peak frenzy. Inventory was insanely low and prices were growing at over 16%. That intensity carried through 2023, with tight supply still pushing prices up another 8.6%. The real pivot point came in early 2025. That's when inventory started to decline and climb fast. And that, of course, brings us right to today, September 2025, where that rising supply has finally tipped the scales, causing the first year-over-year price drop we've seen in a long time. So there's no doubt about it. The balance of power in Calgary's housing market has clearly shifted from sellers to buyers. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. Is what we're seeing a long-awaited market correction, or is it a new window of opportunity? Well, the answer to that really depends on which side of the deal you're on.